I'm Ed Mitchell. I'm the number 2 person in the Grange. Welcome to Prunedale, California, Grange. We're an organization that was founded in the Civil War and helped rebuild the South and the farms that were totally destroyed. Our mission is to support the rural lifestyle and communities. That's one of the reasons why we became involved as an organization and individuals with the lady who started it all, Tanya Prunedale. The sequence we're going through today is different panels. The first one's going to be a local panel to give some summary of what we've seen, what's been happening. Then we'll step aside and Brian and Jami will move in. She's from East Palestine. Tanya, I think you have a wealth.
I just want to let you guys know that all of these people that have come from all over the United States are coming here to help us. They've helped in Conyers, they've helped in East Palestine, Pequot, Ohio. They're here to help us. The cavalry was not coming from our state. These people are here to do whatever they can.
I'm on the Never Again Moss Landing team. I volunteered to be the chief investigator. Our group decided to do our own public investigation and grand jury effort that spanned across 120 days. It began shortly, we started that shortly after we saw the fire and the flames from eyewitness. Most of us were eyewitnesses, either that we lived within a few miles of the fire or we were on high ground and watched the flames up to 100 to 200 feet in the air. Here's a bit of a summary of what happened. 1, Vistra, the operator, chose to lay out a design for storage that put 50,000 batteries at risk of burning on one floor of the storage building if the building's suppression and containment failed. All of you that have seen pictures of that fire, that is irrefutable proof that the suppression system and containment failed. It is also irrefutable evidence that the California Public Utilities Commission, whose mission is to field safe, affordable public utilities, even if they exercised the best effort they could, failed their mission. The burning flames showed that Vistra failed its mission of protecting its own company from huge financial loss while building a plant in about the worst place in California's coast to build it. Yep. A place that has federal and state refuges, sanctuaries for ocean areas, for water areas, for harbors, for fishing industry, that's a magnet for tourism, that has 10 cities curving around the Monterey Bay Central Coast area from the north out of Santa Cruz, California, down along past Watsonville, Castroville, Moss Landing, Salinas, over to the southern end to Pacific Grove, and even down valley. That built next to, that Vistra built knowingly, chose to buy the land and build a plant upwind from the salad bowl of America. Cities, environmental areas, agricultural regions, they chose to be there and failed to protect. Another finding is that the California State Public Utilities Commission, who is the stated regulator of public utilities, is aware and has been knowledgeable of both international fires of large lithium battery facilities, as well as 8 fires in California before they got to the 9th fire, which was burning down the largest battery storage facility in America, across 3¼ years of time, they have not taken one downwind vapor or vapor cloud sample. It would appear to some people that they are deliberately not sampling. And I think our guest from East Palestine understands the issue of where government or entities don't sample.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Becky Steinbrenner. I'm a resident. I'm sorry, I'm just so moved by what you said and seeing you here. Thank you. I have lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains with my family for 40 years, and when I heard over ham radio that the fire was burning, my husband and I went with our binoculars to the beach, and we saw the flames so high. And the smoke. And that's what worried me, the smoke. I said, Dave, this is not good. And so it was very troubling to me to hear really that nothing was being done. That people were evacuated to Castroville and then the very next day sent home. Close your doors and windows, you were told. And that plume of smoke did not stay in Monterey County, and yet the officials of Santa Cruz County were saying that's a Monterey County problem. We don't have to address it, and they haven't. And they continue to be silent and refuse to hold town hall meetings. And that's troubling to me. Santa Cruz County is pushing through 3 such locations for battery energy storage systems. They tell us it will be safe because they will be in containers. They tell us it will be safe because it will be a different technology, but it is still lithium. It is still lithium. And these containers explode. I have looked at the information, one on Minto Road in Watsonville near some affordable housing complexes, very dense subdivision, and the risk analysis that the owner of this New Leaf Energy has submitted does not even include in the picture of some step of risk analysis, the sensitive receptors, any of those people who are living very close by and downwind if there were to be a fire. And we know there will be a fire because that's what these things do with thermal runaway. So I am here to say that we need to link arms, all of us. There is a coalition statewide. We are not the only communities here. This is happening statewide as this rush to have battery energy storage. In Santa Cruz County, they made it artificially sooner. By 2030, the county will be on 100% sustainable energy. The state's goal is 2045. It is too rushed, and we have other technology on the horizon that will be better and safe. Not safer, it will be safe. And that's what we have to pressure our elected officials to do. The city of Morro Bay has done that. They're listening, and they instituted a temporary moratorium. We need to demand that of our local officials here, and we need to insist that they convene a panel of experts, not Vistra, not New Leaf Energy, not DUDEC, who is the environmental consultant being paid by these people to say that it's all going to be okay. We must insist that we are at the table with others who have environmental interests at heart. I want to encourage you all, don't get discouraged. Keep working. We need to support Dawn Addis with her AB 303 that will give a definite setback, 3,200 feet from these installations to sensitive receptors that include homes, that include hospitals, lakes. We need to support her because she's being pushed down by others who are more politically prominent, like Senator Laird, who has come with his own version, SB 38, which is just more rules that have been already disregarded without any consequence. what is this going to fix? AB 303, we need to support them all, let me tell you that. But AB 303 has that definite setback, and the industry does not like it. Well, what does that tell you? The director of 3CE, Central Coast Energy, Community Energy, which controls 96% of the energy customers from Santa Cruz County down to Santa Barbara, they don't like it. They said that's gonna really restrict where we can put our battery energy systems. Duh. That's the point, isn't it? So we need to support AB 303. We need to support AB 434 by Assemblymember Carl DeMaio, who wants a 2-year moratorium until the current state fire codes are updated to accommodate these dangerous systems. And that is happening. On July 24th, there will be a symposium for these battery energy storage fire codes. You can register now, it's open. Google it. State Fire Marshal's Office for Battery Energy Storage Symposium. And we need to have a voice at that symposium from the public, what we want local and state fire codes to have. By the way, local jurisdictions can and should institute more restrictive fire codes on these than the state. It is allowable to be more restrictive. I think I've said enough, but the main thing is stay active, write letters, link arms, and we can do this together. It's got to be a long, hard fight because this is big money and dark politicians. But let's do it. We can.
2017, state of California, PUC, set up an agreement for drones doing monitoring in the city of San Francisco for some of the construction efforts that were going on there. Following that, they set up drone support around airports for what they could do and what they couldn't do. You know how many drones they brought down on the day of the fire?
0.
Zip. None. So that's the type of thing that we're having. We're showing up without meters or means of testing for anything but O2 and hydrogen fluoride. So I have to admit, we really appreciate you all coming here.
Okay, we're going to get started with everyone that came to help us. Jami Ray Wallace. Jami Ray is from East Palestine and is a powerhouse in helping everyone throughout the United States.
I'm not a powerhouse, guys.
That's you.
I'll tell you what I am. I am a pissed off mother. That's what I am. You don't upset a mother. You don't poison her cubs and expect to get away with it. And when people say that, that's exactly my story. For those of you that don't know, we had a Norfolk Southern train derail in our community, February 3rd of 2023, night that changed my life forever. Very small community, 4,700 people, little small country town. Never thought it would happen to us. Our firefighters were told it was malt liquor, just treat it like a house fire. The size of this fire, there were 85 different fire departments from 3 states. We live right in the tri-state area, so we have West Virginia and we have Pennsylvania. Where this derailment happened was behind a bar called State Line, because you can literally stand in the parking lot and put one foot in Ohio and one in PA. So what Norfolk Southern decided to do was to lie to 2 state governors and tell them that this tanker full of vinyl chloride was going to explode and that they needed to make a decision to detonate it themselves. They convinced the decision makers that if this tanker blew on its own, it would blow shrapnel within a 1-mile radius. So they immediately evacuated the 1-mile radius, and then they told them, that they had to detonate these things or they were going to blow up. So they brought in a team from Texas who dug these big ditches, they poked holes in the side of 5 tankers of vinyl chloride. Not just the one that they said was gonna explode, all 5 of them. And they drained all these chemicals into this ditch and set it on fire. I showed a couple of people the picture. It looks like, Ed, what did it look like to you?
It looked like a nuclear bomb. A
Big
black-
mushroom cloud.
Black mushroom cloud. And it's spread out.
I will show anybody that wants to see a picture of it, or you can Google East Palestine, Ohio, just like East Palestine overseas, except for they're Palestine, we're Palestine. And within 48 hours, less than 48 hours, after they blew these 5 tankers of vinyl chloride, and we won't even talk about the other chemicals of concern on the train, that's just one of them. They told us it was safe to come home. Before they blew it, they only evacuated a 1 to 2 mile radius. Most of us, probably like you guys, generational land, your family all lives around here. Even when we evacuated 2.1 miles or 1.1 mile in the other direction that was the 1 mile radius. We went to our families' homes. And do you think those chemicals stopped? Hey, we're at the 1 mile zone, guys, stop right here. There was also issues with the wind. So the plume went straight over to Pennsylvania, who has been all but forgotten in this disaster. I could go into a lot of detail, but I'm limited in time, so I'm gonna skip to present day. Well, first, as soon as people returned home, we started breaking out in rashes, having nosebleeds, issues with our eyes, respiratory issues, tingling tongues, change in taste buds. And what we found out was you can't run a train through an evacuated town. So that's why they lifted the evacuation. The trains were running before we were back in our homes. When I sit on your Facebook pages, I'm the one that you get tired of hearing, same thing in East Palestine, because this is a playbook. You know, we're here now in East Palestine, we're having our teeth fall out. We had a lot of hair loss, gastrointestinal issues, heart attacks, seizures, all of these different things. And I don't know about you, but I never Googled what are chemical symptoms in another community. We were being told it was mass psychosis. The CDC came in, they got sick and left. Never told us. Never told us. And we found out through a FOIA request through the media. And I know, I see the looks on people's faces. Before my own disaster, I would have thought, this woman is crazy, talking about EPA cover-ups and the government being owned by the railroad, but this is real, and it's been a real reality changer for me. We just did some media the other day because the attorneys here uncovered a memo that the CDC sent all of our local doctors. We started going to the doctors and asking to be tested for vinyl chloride. Can't do that. We found the CDC memo that says, don't test these people for vinyl chloride and don't treat them. That's what our government told our local doctors. We walk into a doctor's office, as soon as you mention the chemicals, it's like they cringe and want to run out of the room. We're now seeing long-term illnesses. We're seeing a higher rate of cancer, people's cancer that has returned. Things like diabetes, the chemicals can take it from 0 to 100. We're seeing, like I said, seizures. Our land is still contaminated. Our creeks still have sheen in them. That's the fancy way of saying chemicals. They're still finding pockets of vinyl chloride. Just back in, I think the last time they found it was like November or December-ish. Didn't even tell us until we discovered it and called them out, and then they put it in their EPA newsletter. But my greatest sense of, support, mental stability, came from the other communities that reached out to me. When I said the CDC came in, got sick and left, you would call someone from the BP oil spill and they would say they're still doing that. And right before I came out here, I was in Conyers, Georgia, which the next person to speak will be from Conyers. They were the last community that we welcomed into the Chemically Impacted Communities Coalition. which is something that I founded because I saw the need. You know, it's gonna take more than East Palestine to fight what we're up against. It's gonna take more than Moss Landing, more than Conyers, Georgia. But if we all come together, we can make a change. Because this will happen again. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And they're not gonna treat the next community any better than they've treated anyone in this room. And to me, it breaks my heart, I'm gonna try not to cry. It breaks my heart that you guys are going through this, that I couldn't stop it before it happened again. Because more than anything to me, it's about the children. They're the ones that are truly gonna suffer the consequences. You know, I'm 49 years old, I'm fat, I smoke. You know, chances are in 10 years I'd probably be dead anyways. But my 5-year-old daughter, she has her whole life to live. And there's other things besides death that these chemicals cause, like infertility. And I know I suffered from infertility. And I know as a woman how that feels, and the thoughts of my daughter who went through that. You know, and they say, well, nobody died. Nobody died yet. And anybody that has known someone that suffered from cancer, it's not a beautiful death. You know, I don't want my daughter to watch that happen to me when she's 14 years old, or worse, me have to watch her go through it. And it's scary sitting here saying that, because I don't want to scare you, but I want to tell you the truth, because that's what I wanted. I'd rather you tell me you have, which the CDC eventually did, they said you've all been exposed, you all have chemicals in your body. We don't know what to do about that, but we can treat the cancers it causes.
Yeah.
Why don't you call my friend Wayne O'Connell right now? You know, he got a rare form of breast cancer, had a double mastectomy, and now it's spread all through his body. You know, go tell him that you can treat the cancers that it causes. You know, so I'm just here to offer my support. I want you guys to know the things that I didn't know, the things that I wish I would have known. You know, I want to go to communities and try to put some preventative actions in. Our community didn't have an emergency response plan. I don't know if you guys had one, you know, but accidents happen. So there should, if you are forced to have these chemical companies in your backyard, they should at least have an evacuation plan. You know, the firefighters, I found out they put these chemical trains through rural communities. In Ohio, that's all volunteer firefighters that don't have to be hazmat trained. So you're putting the most dangerous chemicals through communities where the firefighters are not hazmat trained. The second part of the chemically impacted communities sick is I want to be a support system, because I didn't know where to go. Like I said, I'm just a house mother. I've never been involved in this environmental stuff. Where do you go for help? These national nonprofits that helped me, I didn't know about any of them. I want all of the communities to put those resources together. Where do you go to find someone to research you? Research what happened to your body. Where do you go when you need water in your community? And the third part of the chemically impacted communities is to fight this. Like I said, it's going to take more than just one community, one group of people. We all need to stand up, and we need to make people aware. I didn't pay attention. Shame on me. I'd never heard of Love Canal. I'd never heard of Bhopal in India, Times Beach, Missouri. I heard about Flint on TV, but the EPA was there. It couldn't be that bad, right? And now, once you have to deal with the EPA, you know, and don't think they won't try to cover it up. They won't do the testing. They tested upwind from where the plume went. Well, we did air testing upwind. Common sense tells you, you test where the smoke is going. You know, so there was just so many flaws and so many of the same things that I see here. And I just want you guys to know that you're not crazy. If you need support, even if it's just venting, my business cards are on that back table. That's my cell phone number. I won't get back to you probably immediately. If I'm not busy, I'll answer, but I will get back to you. Because that's what I needed, someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. To talk about symptoms. You know, in Conyers, Georgia, this woman blurred vision. Everyone keeps telling me I'm nuts. I just posted about it, and there's 63 people that have it in East Palestine. You know, so I just want you guys to know that you're not alone, and that no one is coming in to save you. Silly me for thinking J.D. Vance was gonna do something. You know, I talked to him, at least his staff on a daily basis. You know, he sent his chief of staff for the state up, it was a newly hired one, to meet me. Because I knew the most about East Palestine. You know, I blindly put a little bit of hope I had left in him. But you're gonna be lied to. You're gonna be taken advantage of. So if you don't stand up and fight for yourselves, no one else is gonna do it. Document everything. Even if you don't think it's important right now, document it. I don't know if you guys are a one consent state or not. You have to ask Mindy. We're not. Okay, never mind. Don't report people. You'll get arrested for it. We could do it, and we did. Got told I was playing dirty for doing it, and I said it's legal. And if you think that's dirty, I'll get a hell of a lot dirtier for my family than recording you, you know? But thank you guys for letting me come here. It was really nice to meet a lot of you guys in person. I know another place we got screwed was the lawsuit, which is why I brought my own attorneys with me, because don't think they won't screw you. And I know if you have any questions about that, you can talk to me kind of off to the side. I know you wanted to talk to me about it because I didn't pay attention to the attorneys. I don't care about money. I've been poor. I'm not afraid of being poor. I can feed a family of 5 on a bag of potatoes if I have to. I'm a country. You know, what I'm afraid of is my daughter not being there. So I was so focused on the human health part of it that I ignored the attorneys. And you can go on any one of our East Palestine pages now and see people outraged that accepted this class action that was shoved down our throat. People like me within the 1 mile zone would have got $70,000 per household. 4 people in my household. $17,500 each. But wait, I was relocated in a hotel for 6 months. So they're deducting all that money. What I got 0. And they have divided our community. Again, stupidly, when people told me they'll try to divide your community, I said, not in East Palestine. We're tight-knit. Somebody gets sick, we're taking soup to their house. The people that turn for money makes me sick to my stomach. You know, we had these attorneys come in and lie flat out. Had a guy, a toxicologist that worked for Dow Chemicals, Chevron, Exxon, couple energy, I can give you his name and I'll show you the video of him talking. Told residents 0 cases of cancer and 0 long-term helpers to get them to sign up for this $10,000 personal injury. Well, you can invest it and then you can pay for your medical care. How far do you think $10,000 is going to get you in chemo treatments? You know, I recently lost my mother-in-law, 61 years old. Prior health issues, she drank a little, but you know, we all make choices. Dead, sitting in her chair. Do I know it was from the chemicals? No. Do I know it wasn't? No. I know when I called Dr. Golomb, what she died of has been reported in our Gulf War veterans. I know it very well could have been, you know, but the not knowing also, you know, will get to you. So I'm just here to support you and to welcome you guys to the Chemically Impacted Communities Coalition. And if there's any time left, I'm sorry I talk a lot. I will let Hannah speak for a moment. And again, please take my card and reach out to me. You always have someone on your side and someone to talk to. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. You know, Jamie and these other folks, Scott, who you'll hear from in a bit, have come in to do this. And you can tell us that this is not something that's unique to us. When you email Never Again right now, they drop on my desktop. And I can vouch pretty much for everything that Jamie's saying. Tanya and I met with Congressman Panetta's district director last week. Very nice young fellow, 32, a little younger. And he was very, you know, very polite. He lives in the area. Tanya wrote, 40 letters to get that meeting? You know, we met with Senator Laird. He's gone. So the cavalry isn't coming, except there is good news. This is what I want to share with you. The good news is that these folks in the cavalry, they're not alone. We're talking to Save Our Shores that wants to do a survey. We're talking to a group called greenaction.org who is really pushing hard to get the state Department of Toxicology engaged in this by forcing them to answer some questions that they haven't wanted to answer. We also know that the EPA has done exactly what they did in East Palestine. They have measured for the wrong things and created the perception in our community that nothing happened. So the EPA is not going to help us. The state so far is staying away from this. So this is the playbook. I thought for sure from the beginning that corporation playbook would be there. I didn't know what it was. I just assumed it'd be everything it is. And it's increasingly looking like disinformation is occurring. Increasingly, we're starting to see the idea that there's going to be an attempt to discredit people. Outside sources will attempt to do that. That's the playbook. What I didn't expect is that the state would not be involved. The feds would not be involved. Just like Jami said, hey, Flint, they're there. Okay, they must be helping. That's not how it works, folks. The good news is we have our community here and more online and more out there. And in talking to a toxicologist in Virginia who's been doing this for 40 years now, he said you can get all the data you want, get all the information you want. We've got some unique data that normally communities don't have with that metal testing. Scott's going to talk to you in a bit. He's going to tell you about how we're doing dioxin testing. I didn't even hear the word dioxin until 3 weeks ago until I talked to Scott and a couple other people. Dioxins are worse than the metals. So nobody's testing for that except for Never Again. Scott, actually, coming to Never Again and saying, I'm going to come out here on my own dime and I'm going to test my dioxins. That's what he does. He's an amazing man. So the cavalry is coming. They're coming through individuals and groups that care about our community, about what's happened. The other thing we need, based upon what this toxicologist, Stephen Lester, said, he said, doesn't matter what data you have and all these things, if your community doesn't come together, you're not going to get anything done. Think of yourselves, if you would, as the heart in this room that can keep this going so we can get that help. If you leave this meeting and you go home and you sit alone or sit with your family and you don't do something, well, we may end up without any help. They're starting to show up. But if we don't take responsibility for what's happened to us and get involved. This is happening today because basically 7 of us, 8, 9 of us, here in this room and a couple outside of this room have worked so hard to keep this alive. We're burned up, burned out, dog tired. We need help. A lot of you may have gone to the website and already said that you'd like to help, and if you haven't contacted, I apologize. It's on my desktop. I need some folks to help take that and start working with that. I've got some folks working on it. Elizabeth Quinn is here today, is going to help with that. There are others. We need your help. We need you to be involved. We need you to tell other people. We need to counter the narrative that nothing happened, because we know otherwise. Jami knows otherwise. Scott knows otherwise.
You'll get burnt out, Brian, and that's also why you need 2.5 years into this. I can tell you mentally, I'm exhausted, but I created a unity council much like you guys did. And the nice thing was, if I needed a month off to clear myself, I knew I still had people fighting. So that community and us being able to give each other a break, because make sure you take care of yourself. You can't take care of anyone else.
A lot of us in this community are retired too, or semi-retired. So if you have the time for yourself, do it for your kids, your grandkids, but if you have the time, get involved. Go to the website, neveragainmosslanding.org. You can join. If you haven't already, you probably have because you probably got the email. But you can go back there and you can send something that says, I have experience in this area, I have competency in this area. What we could really use are a couple of people who've built organizations before. Those people may be in this room. When you're building a car while you do the race, it's tough. we've been racing and trying to build a car. And if anything's come up short, maybe it's the car building because we've been too busy doing the race. So, if you or anybody you know can help, let us know. Did you have a question, Miss?
Yes. Would you please state your name and your position for those of us who
I'm-
don't know who you are and have never met you?
I'm sorry, I've done this before. I'm Brian Roeder. I, along with Ed here and Tanya in the back, and a few other really good folks, created Never Again Moss Landing here in this room on January 20th. We sat there at noon. We said, what's going to happen when people show up tonight? And we decided what we want to try and do is to help people start talking to each other, start creating community. That's what we did. That's all followed from there. Why don't we hand it over to the scientific folks, which is everybody here that you wanted for the scientific side? So Scott, if you and any others. Now, real quick, I just want to do a quick introduction for Scott. So Scott here will tell you a little bit more about it, but he reached out to me, I think 3 weeks ago. And I didn't know who he was. And I thought, who's this guy
He's our
saying
angel. That's
he's got to fly in here and start testing for dioxins? And he came out a week and a half ago. This man's doing it on his own time. He's associated with an organization called the Government Accountability Project, which is a very credible group that focuses on helping whistleblowers. They do other things too, but helping whistleblowers to safely report when there's been a problem with a government or industrial organization, so that we can get the information behind the scenes of what happened. So the Government Accountability Project introduced me to Scott. So he flew out here a week and a half ago, and he tested with another colleague who just came in, Sharon, and they tested at 6 sites where we knew we had elevated metals levels, which is an indicator where the plume went. If nothing else, these numbers we got from the metals testing a week after the fire told us where things went. And normally you don't have that. Most communities don't have that. We just got lucky on that. So based upon that, there were 6 sites identified. I think they're going to test some more, which had very high elevated levels. And they went to those homes. Sharon helped set this up. They went to those homes and they went there and they tested for dioxin. So we're going to get the results in the next week or two. And when we do, we're going to figure out what to do with them. But we're hopeful they're negative. We're really hopeful that they're low. Because if they're really high like the metals, we got a problem. But we're going to figure out how best to make clear what those findings mean, that data, and we're going to send it out, just like we did with the metals. So Scott's paying for all this. He's doing all this on his own. He's back a week and a half later, flying back from the East Coast to help our community. And Scott, I hope you'll talk a little bit why that drives you, why that passion is there, why that commitment is there, and help these folks understand why you're here.
Thanks very much, Brian. I want to talk a little bit about my background, and I'll get to the first of Moss Landing is the 79th disaster I've been in 19 years. The first one was my own. I'll get to that, but I want to really compliment this community for how you've come together and done your own testing. Like in our first call, Brian, you guys are united. Don't let the PR people divide you. That's why the PR people make the big money, because most of the time it works. And I want to say these presentations today, thank you for motivating me to do even more. And what I say after going through this, we live in a world now that I believe people can come together. We can all agree that we should have a clean environment, safe food, safe water, and we should leave this world a better place and cleaner for our children. And what motivates me, one of the primary things, I have 2 daughters, my first grandchild, a year and a half old. Your children and your grandchildren are not going to remember you by how much money you made or didn't make. They're going to remember, did you do the right thing? Did you do the ethical thing? Did you make a tough decision and leave them in a better place? So I really believe at the end of the day, most people want to do the right thing. You know, I always give people a chance to come out and do the right thing. So now to talk a little bit about my first disaster, it was June 28th, 2006. I owned a factory with 100 employees in upstate New York. There was what they call a 500-year flood, oil contaminated water, shut down the whole factory. Insurance company declared the manufacturing space in the basement, didn't pay. So I immediately went out and I liquidated my entire life, rebuilt everything, and got me back to work. And I walked the streets. This is the other one. I walked the streets, had employees that didn't know how they were going to get formula for their babies, feed their families. Did everything I could to get everybody back to work. We were able to recover, work through it. And when I realized in the middle of this, here I thought that when the government agency tells me the water is safe, it's safe. But you think, and then I realized that all these standards are based on a flawed assumption that water and contamination are always in equilibrium at a steady state. The only time it's a steady state is if it's an aquarium or a jar. So you can take a water sample from the top of the water and declare it safe. Nothing in it. It's very easy to gain. So then I started realizing there's something called a water column beneath the surface above the bottom where life is. You got to take the samples from the water where the life is, not just from the bottom or the top. So I started to realize this, and then as I liquidated my life and rebuilt the company, I became obsessed with oil and water. I had a product sitting in the corner at the time that was a medical product, Homeland Security Responders. If it's actually approved as a medical device, it doesn't have plasticizers or phthalates, which goes back to vinyl chloride and all that stuff. And that product was, absorbing oil and helping cleaning out. So roll forward, I said I'm going to liquidate my life, put the company back together. BP happened. I went down to the BP oil spill, and it turned out they were able to use the technology that basically I invented from this horrible disaster, and were able to prevent the burning of marshes in 200 miles. So that's how it started. And then I started with some NOAA scientists that really talked about, Scott, you got some good ideas. You might want to file for some patents. So I have 25 different patents, most of which where I'm a named inventor on all, most of which are related to environmental testing. And something recently, too, that drives me passion is, and this ties into Conyers, Georgia, it ties into Moss Landing. I had scientists from the San Juan Islands in Washington. When they first reached out to me, said, Scott, we read about you, your patents, we can't figure out what's killing all the eelgrass. We got the orcopods and everything. And to show I thought San Juan, I didn't know Washington. The islands are beautiful. So we started working up there with the eelgrass, and one of the labs we're using here is ALS Kelso, which is one of the predominant crop labs that I'm going to be using here and they're testing for PFAS too. And the other lab I use is Eurofins, which I've used in East Palestine. So that's kind of how all this is connected in all these communities. And basically, what you see here is complete systemic failure, complete betrayal by the government agencies that are supposed to protect all of the communities, all the taxpayers. And what really motivates me is to really, today I can't thank you enough for allowing me to be here and just witness, starting with Jami, with Brian, and all of you that have spoken. Sometimes I apologize, I'm terrible at remembering names. Wouldn't make a good politician because I can't remember names right away, and I'm too honest. So back to my first disaster, 500-year flood. That was a press conference with Senator Chuck Schumer at the time. Senator Hillary Clinton was my other senator, and George Pataki, a Republican governor. And believe it or not, it was just 19 years ago. There was no politics involved. It's getting back to, it's about the environment. It's about a community coming together. No one was playing this for politics. And I want to do everything I can to bring communities together and try to help change all this. So, and this will be available on the Moss Landing Facebook group tonight. It'll be available on my Facebook group. And that's a live link to, if you want to see on the background, 19 years ago, a press conference with me talking about recovery and the disaster and walking through the floodwaters and so on. Next slide, please. I'm a whistleblower client of the Government Accountability Project. They are very important. I wouldn't be standing here, wouldn't be able to do what I do without their protection. In East Palestine, they reached out to me in September of of 2023, I officially became a client. And Norfolk Southern, I was coming back, Jamie, I was from that October 16th Unity Council meeting. I was at the Cleveland airport. I live in Cape Cod, so the Barnstable sheriff calls me and says, "Are you Mr. Smith?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, I have some papers to serve you. I have some papers to serve you. So I called my personal attorney and said, "I'm not in any litigation right now. Do you really think Norfolk Southern is stupid enough to try to subpoena me?" Sure enough, I went home, and I don't run from subpoenas, and it was Norfolk Southern. You know the expression, throw a rabbit in the briar patch? Yeah. Well, and the scientific team I worked with, like, "Oh, how you doing?" and everything, but I'm not built like other people. And this subpoena motivated me. And the Government Accountability Project, I'm talking about this because I know other potential whistleblowers are watching today, and I know there's some potential ones out here, and I can tell you, you can trust Leslie Pacey, Tom Devine, the legal, you can trust them with your life. Their protection on me is better than armed guards, it really is. Because all the smears, all the attacks, all the trolls, all the public relations firms, they protect you in every way imaginable and legally. So that is a link to their website too. They also have a food safety division, and they do FOIAs, and I work with them on that. So they've started to look into Moss Landing, and I hope on one of my follow-up trips I'll be able to bring Leslie Paisley with me like I did at East Palestine at some point. Also want to, I probably wouldn't be standing here working in Conyers, Georgia, or meeting any of you great people if it weren't for somebody named Courtney Miller. And I promised her family that I would always never let people forget about her. On February 17th of 2023, she reached out to me, it was Twitter at the time, and said, "Please come help me test my water." I wasn't really going to go to East Palestine because, you know, there was a small creek, I thought, wow, the fire's out. I got there on the ground. I was going to go there 2 times. I've never seen in all my experience such blatant corruption orchestrated between the EPA and everything. The same playbook over and over again that I've seen for 19 years, but on steroids in East Palestine. So I'm a pretty stubborn individual. I fight on principle, and going 2 to 3 times turned 27 trips and 31 rounds of testing. And Courtney Miller passed away at 36, way too young. And left 2 beautiful kids behind, and I promised her best friend and family that I would, every community will never let her forget. And in December of 2024, Government Accountability Project had nominated me for an international award, and this award is really not about me, it's about Courtney and the communities, and there's a link to it for positive social change. So you want to ask, this is another big thing that motivates me, it's people like Courtney Miller, people like all of you in the room, about why we're doing what we're doing. But as tough as this world is, it can change by millions of people coming together. Next slide. And I want to talk a little bit more about this, and I'll get into the testing plan, but I wanted to provide this context and background because in Moss Landing, what you're going to face, because of all the crops here and the issue with green technology, this is going to be a big challenge. So staying united is huge. This battle can be won, but it's going to be the long game, and it's going to be a war because there's a lot of corporate influence, and the systemic failures we have are all based by the undue influence. And one other thing is the Norfolk Southern attorney that subpoenaed me was from WilmerHale, named San Francisco Divino Pujara, ex-EPA attorney. You go to her background, and it talks about environmental justice, well, she sold out. And I'm glad you asked me that, Brian. I'm thinking, I probably have 50 things that motivate me. What really motivates me is people like Divina Pujara. She started this, she subpoenaed me in my driveway, so I can use her name. And she wants to claim she cares so much about the environment. Well, she sold out and tried to work for Norfolk Southern and shut everything down. So that is what has to stop. in the corporate capture. And another whistleblower with Government Accountability Project is Stephen Petty. I'm trying to think of, Jami, how to efficiently and succinctly explain this. Stephen Petty was the class actions expert witness. And I was doing a Twitter Spaces. I had no idea who he was talking. He started talking to me after that on Twitter Spaces. Scott, you've got more testing over time. You've got more stuff. I mean, how would you, I'd like to talk to you more and more. And we started talking, and then all of a sudden there was a settlement. And he had been on the media, the class action attorneys withheld his testing, never gave it to the clients. And they said, nothing to see here. And this is all over, you can see on the YouTube site and social media, the class action attorneys, me independently on the media, and Stephen Petty, all saying the same thing, except for what was around April 10th, Jami. On April 10th, what happened was the class action attorneys got $180 million award. And then they brought in Arch Carson and the whole narrative changed. So this is all part of our systemic failure. And Stephen Petty has a sworn declaration, talks about my testing. He talks about how, like Brian, you were talking about EPA, the control samples, they went into where the plumes were contaminated. We went and got control samples where the plume wasn't. So, and there's also a link to my sworn declaration in the Hill interview. So as people contact you, just know that, to the best of my knowledge, the only two people that have been testing in East Palestine that have actually signed sworn declarations under the penalties of perjury are the two of us. So with all the statements coming from everybody else, nothing to see here, okay, go sign the statement. So, and then the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry. This data is important to your community. Why? Because you've got these plumes from East Palestine to Conyers to Moss Landing. Well, the chemicals are a little bit different. There are more similarities than you think. And these are all links that you can go to. Next slide. I also have an expression of you can't find what you don't look for, and that's what you see over and over again. That's the playbook, and that's why the other side kind of doesn't like me too much, because it's that simple. You can't find what you don't look for. If you don't look for dioxins, you can say there's no problem. And then the next narrative, watch, as these results start coming back, the next narrative, I can tell you right now, and I said this on a TV interview before, in the next week, the EPA was saying that the narrative is going to be it's ubiquitous in the environment. Blame the victim. You know, you did this in college, you did that in college, you're exposing yourself to the chemicals at home. When you don't really need my testing or anybody else's testing to know none of your health symptoms were ubiquitous before the event. But this is the approach. Given that I was just here on the 17th, and I don't have preliminary results, I wanted to talk about the logic, and I'm going to be staying for meetings tomorrow, and I'm here to listen to the community, and I'm probably going to come back for a week once we get these preliminary results. But I want to show you the methodology of logic. If you've got concerns or suggestions, all ears. But this was the presentation that we were invited to give, the scientific team that worked with me. And what we do is we characterize the fade and transport of all, especially what are called the persistent compounds, the chemicals that don't go away, like the dioxins and the SVOCs. And we put this together, laying out all the different methods, what we used, how we did it. Next slide. And this is the same approach we're using in Conyers and everywhere. So what we do is we measure what we call background. And you'll see up here, and we went where the plume was not to get the control sample. And Brian would talk about tomorrow about picking where we're going to take control samples here. We definitely knew it wasn't there, so we take the control sample. For example, on the dioxins, I won't get into it on this presentation, but there's something called toxic equivalency, which is, it's basically an index to see how contaminated things are. So we knew that control was 1.7. We knew that even the Norfolk Southern contractor, Arcadis, they were using 4.8 as a threshold to do testing. So what we were looking at is background for urban industrial areas. So if you want to be conservative, to lay your position out, especially with the other side. So let's say you want to declare background, we didn't make an official declaration, but you want to say the background is 8 parts per trillion TEQ. Well, 33% of our samples were over 8. 45% were over the very own Norfolk Southern Contractors set rate of 4.8. So what we do with this is we try to identify what we call hot zones. That doesn't mean the other zones aren't contaminated because you get into the mixtures, but these, we were able to identify the hot zones. And that's the goal here. Hot zones is where you really got a problem. That doesn't mean the other zones aren't zones for concern, but we want to try to identify the high contamination. And then we also take, there's also for the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, we calculate a TEQ of 30.6. And go to the next slide, please. And we had TEQs in the hundreds with us. And then this is a slide from BioLab where you had the ash raining down. Next slide. And this is what we call the fingerprint. This is really what we're going to do here. And every fingerprint is different with dioxins. And when they tell you you generated the dioxins from your backyard barber group, we'll be able to tell you why that's not true. Next slide. This is where I compared. The other thing is I'm using the same lab, so I can compare East Palestine, Conyers, and Moss Landing, and no one else can do that. And these are all 3 locations. Next slide. And this is where in Conyers, believe it or not, the dioxin particles on the surfaces we tested were 752% higher, and that is an identified location where people are very sick, right near ground zero. Next slide. Furnace filters, air filters in your cars, why they matter? Because unless we're going to take biopsies of your lungs, the next best thing is to see what particles are remaining on the filters. Next slide. Human hair is 50 to 70 microns, so you're talking about particles you can't see. Next slide. Then I got into these furnace filters, and you realize all these different MERV ratings. At the end of the day, what this says, you're lucky if you capture 20 to 30%. Everything else is flowing through. So if we can see, at this point in time, it's about identifying what you may have been exposed to, not about levels. They're going to try to shift you about declare a singular use, a singular exposure to a singular chemical. That's irrelevant. It's about mixtures of chemicals. There are no standards for mixtures. That's called synergistic toxicity. That's the thing they don't want to talk about. Next slide. And this is a map of the 6 sites and 45 samples I have taken so far. So we'll be updating this map and going with the Moss Landing group. But we're right in where the plume has been identified. And next slide. This is my last slide. Remember this, the 5 Ds. I met Dr. Beatrice Golomb from University of San Diego. She taught me about the 4 Ds. I added a 5th. There's a reason the government agencies, the responsible parties spend so much money, because PR works. First you delay, then you deny, then you discredit, then you dismiss. If that doesn't work, you defame. And then with that being said, I want to also just have Dr. Jim Dahlgren, who lives in California, is going to be one of the ones advising me as I go forward here. And he is an expert, and he's a medical doctor. So with that being said,
so you can tell how lucky we are. Unfortunately, it's based upon what's happened in other communities. I just want to give you a little piece based on what Scott was saying. So there's a counter narrative out there, which we've all heard, which is basically nothing's happened, nothing to worry about. Fortunately, a lot of us have been stuck with a red pill if you remember from The Matrix. And it does change your life. For my family, there's everything before January 16th and everything since. So how is it possible that there's this other narrative? EPA, which came out that weekend, they say, was using ground testing equipment, and they were testing for two things. I think it's hexafluorine, it might be hydrofluorine. I think it's hexafluorine. It's lighter than air. If you're testing on the ground, the product that you're testing for is going straight up. You're not going to get a lot of numbers. They also said on that Monday that it was destroyed. We have the numbers right at the website showing that there were 2 spikes that weekend. So that wasn't true. That wasn't destroyed. The assertion was made by that young woman from the EPA. They were also measuring for a particular matter, 2.5 microns and above. This fire generated upwards of 5,000 degrees of heat, which vaporized the things that were in there. So what actually happened is they weren't testing for the size of the stuff that was coming out. Why the EPA wasn't, I don't know. You'd think that EPA would be doing these things. That they have scientists and technicians and people who know what to test for. So that narrative that we tested, we're still testing, we're not finding anything, everything's fine. It's based upon garbage in, garbage out. The county's been trying, but their protocols aren't really accurate for what happened. And it's hard, I think, for counties, even though they have good people working there, to be able to respond in a dynamic way. They have protocols, they're told what to do. One example is that the health department waited for almost a month to issue anything. We were hammering them in the week and a half leading up to when they finally issued. Because I think if we had it, the community had it, they wouldn't have done anything. And what they did is they said, we're waiting on the state. So a month into this, they barely heard anything from the state. When they finally issued, went out to the hospitals and the medical community, which still didn't necessarily get the memo. So the point is that you're not crazy, folks. And we know that the people who have pre-existing conditions and bronchial issues were hit really hard. When I'm talking to people, I say, how do I explain that there are thousands of people who didn't get sick, but there are hundreds who've been all over Facebook saying how sick they are? And the answer is, just like with COVID, the high-risk folks are the ones who got hit first. But the sad part is, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who don't realize that there's now a loaded gun against their head and they're playing Russian roulette. Those are our neighbors, family members. And we'll see what happens in 10 to 20 years, maybe sooner. So I'm sorry it's not good news. I'm a lighthearted guy. I like to tell jokes, keep people laughing. But I haven't been able to do that for the last 4 months, and I apologize. So you're not crazy. Keep telling the story. If you need the knowledge to back up what you know, you can go to neveragainmosslanding.org/resources. If any of you want to get the 100 to 150 documents that are on my desktop posted there, because I don't have time, or as much time as I need, send me an email. And I will get your help. Because there's a lot there that I've seen that I want to get onto that site so you can see it. It is pretty sharp. So you're not crazy.
My name is Dr. James Dahlgren. I've been practicing in internal medicine with subspecialty in toxicology for over 50 years. In 1971, while I was still a fellow at UCLA, I was called the only doctor. I was doing a fellowship. There was no full-time person. I was called because I was doing research on the toxicity of antibiotics. And there was a group of workers at a lead smelter in Los Angeles who were sick and they wanted some help. So instead of going into the field of internal medicine, infectious disease, and antibiotics, I became interested and fascinated by the poisoning of human beings by a common occupational practice. They were melting down old batteries to recover the lead. And all 200 workers in that factory were sick. And over half of them retired on full disability when I helped them identify and document why they were so sick. Since then, my life has been dedicated to helping people who have been poisoned. Originally, the first 25 years, it was mainly occupational poisoning. I was the first doctor to testify about asbestos being a cancer-causing agent, and it should be banned. I also, back to the lead smelter, we got the lead requirements in the workplace reduced by 80%. They were allowing, the government was allowing very high levels. And of course, everybody was getting sick, and it was within legal limits. So we got it to come down. There's two things I think I can point to that had profound effects and was worth the effort I was putting in to try to help human beings who were being poisoned needlessly by industry because they didn't care about people. Well, a few years later, I became involved in a case involving some people who lived in Hinckley, California, where they got poisoned from the water that they were using. They all lived on small farms or small acreage, and their water was from their own wells. Turns out PG&E had a heat transfer facility just on the edge of town, edge of this community, where they were using a chemical called Chrome-6, to affect some operational things in their cooling towers. These people got terribly, terribly sick from their exposure. Cancers, particularly in the children who were dying of cancer. Aaron Brockovich went out to that community and united them and got them to file a suit, and of course, most of them got enough money so they could move away. And that's when I got involved in community poisonings. And I've now been around the country, and I won't bore you with the details, but as has been said just a few minutes ago by these very wonderful people that have been working in East Palestine. What they're saying, I've seen over and over and over again over the last 50 plus years that I've been doing this. First, it was industry that didn't care about their workers, and now I see it's industry that doesn't care about the communities they poison. And what they do, like you are all being told, the EPA, when it was first founded, ironically, back in 1970, 71, under Nixon, of all people, they actually did a pretty good job for a couple of years. The first thing they did was Times Beach, Missouri, where they actually evacuated people and they did some stuff. They also did some stuff at Love Canal up in upstate New York. They helped the people there, they closed the neighborhood, they actually did something good. But that was the end. EPA, after that, became completely dishonest. And I've worked with community groups, doctors, lawyers, all across the country, and the EPA is on the side of industry. They're not on the side of the people. Their original charge was to help people, but they don't do that anymore. And you can see that what happened here. And unfortunately, that's true for the state and usually the counties. They usually get pressured by economic factors into not helping people. So what we have to do here, there's been hundreds of fires involving lithium batteries all around the world. But not a single study has been done of the health effects of those people. Not a single study. At least with dioxin and with some of the metals, we actually have some studies. But there's not a single study of human beings being exposed to lithium battery fire. Now we have at least 20 different articles that I've read over the last few years that document the risks they all document that it's a highly risky thing. That fire put out at least 100 known toxic chemicals. And when they do their risk assessment, you all know what a risk assessment is. It's where they estimate, based on some animal data, the concentrations that might have an adverse effect. Almost never on human data. Well, they found that the hazardous index from fire involving lithium batteries is 100 times higher than it should be, based on extrapolation from animal studies, which are all generous. They're not really as tight as they should be. So the fact that we have good documentation that this is highly, highly dangerous to be involved in, and it will have not only acute effects, but chronic effects. The community will be the soil, the water, the air, the homes, the house dust, your soil around your homes is all contaminated from that fire. So you have continuing exposure. It needs to be measured, it needs to be removed, it needs to be remediated if it is found to be high, like I'm sure it will be in the cases of many of your homes. We also have to do a health study, because they can argue all they want about the risk assessment, counting the number of micrograms or milligrams of this or that that's in the soil or in the air or in the food or in your house dust. But what really counts is, are people sick from it? That's what moves people. That's why there's not been a single study of the health effects from the lithium battery fires. Not a single study of the health effects in human beings. And they actually, in animal studies, haven't even done animal studies with the 100 elements that are present in the fire from a lithium battery factory like this, or storage facility. So it's like conspiracies and manipulation and figuring out a way to hide the health effects that are coming from it. And this is going to be a seminal moment for us if we can do detailed health studies on everybody in this community and link it to their exposures. So that's what I'm here to do, and I hope we can complete that study, and it'll be the first study that's ever been done. It'll be similar to what I've done in other cases. I'll be the one that helps pull together, my colleagues and mine to identify the problem and do something about it.
I'd really like to talk to you after this too, Doctor. I'm sorry I hadn't met him before this, but I've been working with Dr. Beatrice Golomb. She's from the University of California, San Diego. She worked at the VA when our vets were coming home from the Gulf War sick. And the VA said, give them psych meds. After a while, she started listening to the people and their bodies. And talking about no research, there's also no research on multiple chemical exposure. When they get these reportable limits, the EPA, they only expose those subjects to one single chemical at a time. So what happens when you're exposed to hundreds of chemicals, even if they're below that reportable limit? There's also the only chemical that's really regulated with human health is your medication. And they don't look at how these chemicals impact each other. We all know there's some meds that you can't take with other meds because of the way that they interact. But Dr. Golomb studied our Gulf War vets. She's testified in front of Congress. She's one of the main reasons why Gulf War illness is recognized now, and they have the PACT Act. And she got funding for an NIH study in East Palestine. And what she's doing is comparing our symptom profiles to the profiles of the Gulf War veterans to see if we're having the same symptoms. We do not have NIH funding for Moss Landing right now or for Conyers, but the very first part of it is filling out a survey about your health. And that was kind of no cost. And I said, let's do it now. Because some of it will say, you know, did this happen within 2 weeks of the derailment? Well, 2 years, 3 years ago, you're not gonna remember. And another thing I learned is it takes like 9 months to get these grants. When it comes to chemical exposure, we need to be in there day one. So there's also a sign-up sheet if you'd like to take that survey in the back. Put your name, or like I said, take my card, email me, call me. But thank you guys.
Thank you, Jami. So a couple of the folks from Keenan Law Firm are going to come up here, talk to you. They have a lot of experiences in this area, and they helped put this together.
Hi everyone, Francesca Caminero with Caminero Law. I am a Spanish speaker and I am really here to represent the migrant workers. You know, I believe that everyone deserves to have a voice. So I got into the legal field when I saw my mother struggling when I was a child to be able to communicate, right? And so we know that there are a lot of migrant workers in this area who are probably afraid to come forward and would prefer to have someone that speaks their language. And so I am here to be that person. So if you know of anyone who is a Spanish speaker and has been affected, I'm gonna have my business cards on the table. I'm willing to come back as long as I need to be here to speak with them. I just need to know where to find them. I am willing to have a meeting like this as well. I'm just not sure if they're wanting to come to something like this. So, Francesca Caminero with Caminero Law. Thank you.
All right, my name is Mindy Bish. I'm with the Keenan Law Firm. I work with Jedediah Brustman from Brustman Law and David Graham from Graham Law Firm. And we work also with Scott and with Dr. Dahlgren. And what we do is we try to handle these kinds of community poisoning, because let's be frank, that's what it is, cases, differently than any of the other lawyers that you've talked to. And we follow Don Keenan, who you can look up. Don Keenan, I like to refer to him as the GOAT. He is an inner circle member. He's practiced law for 50 years. When you go to his website, he does not list his settlements. He does not believe that settlements is what makes a good lawyer. Trial verdicts do. Because you want a lawyer that goes to trial. What they did should entitle all of you to punitive damages. And you don't get punitive damages from a settlement. So all I want to do is to give you an idea of how we handle cases. I went to East Palestine in December, we were asked, and I realized we were there too late. I have never done a class action. I've really never done a mass tort. I did not know, frankly, how bad they were for clients until I went to East Palestine. And I thought, you know, after being a lawyer for 33 years, I'm 65 years old, I thought, oh, this can't be. And so what I learned was class actions were established by the corporations that did the harm. What better way to poison all of you and take care of it than to get you all together, get one person to be the class representative for 7,000 people who have no names. You are, dear client, you don't have a name. I don't know what's wrong with you, and I don't care. Because you're not the class representative. Only the class representative do I care about. And then, what's really important is that I filed my class action lawsuit first. And that I got the biggest name in the book, because I want to be assigned to the executive committee. Because if I'm the lawyer on the executive committee, I get to make the most money. Then what I do is I pretend to litigate your case. Because the executive committee splits up the depositions. They don't talk to one another because they want, each one of them wants to do the most work. So when the case settles, they can argue they get more of the money. You want to see the argument? Look at all the lawyers fighting over the attorney fees in East Palestine.
Amen.
And you'll see the argument. And then, once I settle it, I'll hire a PR firm to make it look good so that I get my percentage of people to agree to it. Because if they don't, I can't settle it. So what do I have to do? I have to get you all fighting. You have to be mad at you because you said no and you said yes. And if you keep saying no, then you can't get the money. So you are holding up my money. And you start to have to hate one another. And then you all find out that they all lied to you. You got no money. And you start getting cancer. That's a class action. It's a class action in East Palestine. They settled it. Now I'll be straight with you. Robert F. Kennedy is of counsel to Morgan & Morgan. All those letters you're seeing that came out. Don't you think he knew about that stuff in his capacity? I don't know. I don't know. But he works for him and he still does. If you think it was the Biden administration versus the Trump administration, oh please.
All of them.
It's the EPA. It's the CDC. It is business as usual. And we know it. So that's the class action. And if you're in a class action, I will tell you, if you're not the class representative, you don't matter. No one's asking you how you feel. No one's asking you if you need a doctor. No one's asking you, how has this affected you? No one. Now, mass tort. If you're in a mass tort, you know what that is? A class action with a different name. The way mass torts work, again, I need to be the first one to the courthouse. Why? Because I want to be the lead counsel on the mass tort. Why? Because then I control it, and if I control it as the attorney, I make the most money. So I filed a lawsuit without knowing what any of you have gone through, what the testing on the ground shows. I know nothing, but I filed my lawsuit 3 days after the fire. And I signed you all up before you had a chance to even think about what happened to you. Then what happens is I go to court, and the defendants and the mass tort lawyers and the judge decide who are my bellwether plaintiffs. Because you see, now all of you have to be divided up into groups of injuries, because you're all easily divided. So we're going to decide maybe 17 people will now represent everyone in the mass tort, and you'll be divided up. So you belong in lane number 1. You belong in lane number 17. And I, as the lawyer, will pick my 17 bellwethers. If you're not a bellwether, don't bother me. I'm not trying your case yet. Your case is going to get settled. You're way back there. I'm going to try and concentrate on my bellwethers. They're going to make all the decisions. They're going to decide if your case gets settled. And then when they decide what happens, I'm going to shove it down the throat of everyone else. That's how mass torts work. Now I'm telling you this because you would think I would know it, but I really didn't. And I was horrified. And I'm at a stage of my law career where, frankly, I don't have to do this. But what I am trying to do, what we are trying to do, is to put mass tort lawyers that descend on everyone and class action lawyers out of business. Because we're going to offer a different way of doing things. And if we can do this successfully, in order for them to compete, they will have to change. So what we've done is we put you back in the equation. If you call the people in East Palestine, and I'm not saying, we took 800 clients in East Palestine, 279 families. I have been doing 8 Zoom calls a day, almost 6 days a week since probably a week before Christmas. I know every family. I know where they lived. I know that some of them live on a street named after their family because there's so many of them that live there. I know who moved away from who and destroyed their family's dreams. I know it because I asked. I couldn't believe the number of people who said to me, no one ever asked me. I spend the time with you because that's what a lawyer is supposed to do. I develop strategies and I don't file a lawsuit until we're ready. The Keenan Law Firm, we file a lawsuit when we're ready for trial. We don't file before we know everything. We go learn everything, then we file. Why would we do it the other way? We don't play catch up, file first, and then catch up. We file, we do our testing, we work with our experts, we hire them, we do our evidence. We do it the right way, not the fast way, because we are not settlement lawyers. I failed to introduce Melinda over here, by the way, the other Mindy. Melinda is an associate with the Keenan Law Firm, soon to be all of our group. I could not survive without Melinda. I always tell her this. Trust me, I could not survive. Because I'm on Zoom calls with all of you and at the managing partner of the Keenan Law Firm. By the way, when I went to work with Mr. Keenan, I was thinking I might semi-retire, and I ended up being the managing partner of 2 law firms, the one I've been running in California since 1989 and the Keenan Law Firm. So I think that's what retirement looks like to me, you know? But we want you. And I talked to someone earlier, without outing anyone, he said to me, I don't have any real issues right now. And I asked him this question. Do you have children? Yes. Do you have grandchildren? Yes. Since the battery fire, tell me what that's like. He said, I worry every day. I look at them and I'm afraid every day. Well, then don't tell me you don't have any damages. I'm not here to count the dollar and cents for your medical bills. I'm here to talk to you about the human damages. The loss of the safety of your home. How many of you feel safe in your home? How many people feel afraid in their homes? That is a damage that we should be talking about. The loss of feeling safe. You know, in COVID, our homes became our safety nets, right? That was our safe place. Now, with all of this, we have no safe place anymore. That is what this did. That's the real loss, the betrayal, the belief that government somehow cared, that the people we pay our tax dollars to care. All of it is gone. That's the human loss. That's what I care about. That's what we care about. We'll take care of your medical issues. We'll work with Dr. Dahlgren. We'll work with the experts that we have who understand all this to document those losses. I'm not going to ignore those. But it's so much more than that. And if you're represented by someone and they're not talking to you about that, ask yourself if they're the right person for you. That's all. Because you have a choice.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
A number of people did not have the information that you shared with us right now.
All right.
So they have joined up or signed up with other law firms. Can they leave those law firms and join you?
Yes.
And they just have to tell them a letter or send them a letter?
You just tell me who the lawyer is, and I'll send him a real nice letter advising him that a client he had and probably didn't even know is no longer his client, his or her client. And whatever attorney fees they believe they're entitled to come out of our money. I just want to represent people, and I want to represent them well, and I want them to matter.
So
That's all.
what is your fee?
We are a contingency fee. So I will tell you, our contract says 1/3 if it settles. It's not going to settle, so it's 40%. We're going to be filing for punitive damages. We are not a settlement firm. If you hire us, you are in for the long haul. If you're not prepared to be in for the long haul, don't hire us. We're not a fit for you. That's not what we're looking to do. We are looking for accountability and everything you're entitled to. The verdicts that you see against these companies in the hundreds of millions, what you don't understand is the individual damages are like $1 million or $2 million. The punitive damages are the $200 to $300 million. Justice and accountability have never happened in this country by government. They happen with juries. You want to hurt, you want to change, you hit them where it hurts, and that's their pocketbook. You don't hit them hard in their pocketbook, they go back to business as usual. You settle and let them off the hook for not money without demanding change, they go back to business as usual. We don't want business as usual. We want change. So we're in it for the long haul. So unless you're in it for the long haul, I warn you, it's not us.
I was just curious because I've heard other lawyers talk not about class action or mass tort, but instead mass action. So if you're not doing settlements, what would you call what you're doing? Is it mass action or is it something else?
No, it's a law, it's no different. It's a lawsuit that'll have all of you who are our clients, because that way we can divide up the cost of experts. And then we just look at them and say, pick the first 20 we're going to try, and we're going to try them all.
Okay.
That's what we tell them. We don't have to label it something convenient for them to understand. Jami?
You might want to explain what punitive damages are.
It's damages to punish the hell out of them.
Thank you.
And it's based on what they're worth and how angry a jury is on what they did. And that's what you want.
That's why the woman got $1 million for spilling the coffee on her at
Oh,
McDonald's.
no, don't bring up that. But she didn't really. See, the problem with the McDonald's case is it's completely misunderstood. They don't know that McDonald's had had hot coffee and had been warned 1 million times, and she never even got all that much money. It's the first case jurors always bring up, and you always go, no.
Sorry.
For plaintiff lawyers, the McDonald's case, you're like, oh, no. It's a flashpoint for jurors, because it's really not true.
I hate to be sticking on this issue, but do you know what mass action is? Because what you're describing sounds a lot like what mass action is.
There's no such thing.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's just somebody who wants to give it a label When you go into a court, there's no such thing as a mass action case. So if I file a case with 100 people, there's no box I check calling it a mass action. It's just a case with a lot of plaintiffs.
Okay.
So that's why the thing of it is, and this is what I will tell you, labels matter. And mass action is not a label that does any of us any good, and I refuse to use it.
Yeah, for Dr. Dahlgren. So my question is that you're going to do a study, the very first study for the
Human beings exposed to a fire with batteries made of lithium. Or
Right.
with lithium. By
Right.
the way, there's a whole bunch of stuff in those batteries besides lithium. And a
Right.
lot of that stuff is highly toxic. That's why the studies that have been done, where they looked at fires and analyzed the fire, the smoke, fumes, the water that runs off. When they try to put the fire out, that water that runs off fills the streams. It may get into your house. It may get into the crops that are being grown. And it's a disaster because there's highly toxic chemicals in that runoff water. Just to start with. But anyway, I'm interrupting you.
Thank you. So my question is, you're going to do a study, which is great, and it is only for the clients with Keenan Law Firm?
Well, that's probably going to be the limitation, and we'll try to get other people to join that particular law firm because we have expenses associated with doing the study. We're not going to try to get a government study because we don't trust them. And by the way, all the studies I've done on other communities has been pivotal. I mean, for example, the asbestos case. I interviewed and examined all the workers in an asbestos factory, and we published the data, and we used that as a basis to get into the first trial. Until that trial, asbestos was being used without controls around the country and around the world. And after that effort, by just one factory with the workers in that factory, we were able to prove, along with a lot of other studies that had been done by others over time that had been ignored. And as somebody made a point, by having a litigation where the companies had to pay millions and millions of dollars in damages, that's what made them pay attention. There were studies back in the 1930s of asbestos and how damaging it was, but industry just ignored it until the lawsuits forced them to pay for the injury they caused. So that is an unfortunate reality we live in. It would be nice if the government would come in and slap these people down who are killing you, but they don't, because they're all interested in getting elected next time and they need money for that election. So.
Marie, was your question answered?
I
Yeah,
don't
we're
think
gonna-
that's...
Yes, we're going to do a study of you,
So-
and only the members of the law firm you sign up with.
I don't know whether this is on for me. Anyway, I'll yell. I have a loud voice. Couldn't it be possible that your study include all the other lawsuits?
No, at some point, that study, where the Keenan Law Firm is going to be paying for that study and financing it. The problem with that is the way the law works, the way that experts work in litigation. So what we'll be doing is we're going to create the study with our clients, and then once we litigate this case, that study will be out there for the benefit of all the subsequent lawsuits that come thereafter.
But you'll miss the people that are already signed up and happy with their lawyers who have symptoms,
Well, then
who have
your lawyer-
data.
Tell their lawyer to do the study.
Their lawyers should be hiring doctors to do the same kinds of.
So we're being divided.
So
Well,
just to be
it's up
clear,
there.
you won't be using the data that we collected as part of your study, right? The 124 samples, I'm just checking the logic of this.
Why not?
Well,
As long as that's available.
On the health studies that we do, they're much more in-depth with our clients. We have a lot of doctors and questionnaires and things that we use. And so we have very scientific approaches. And, you know, the thing that I'm gonna provide you is our firm has a very scientific approach to what needs to be done in these situations. And the firms that everyone's with should be doing
The same
the
thing.
very same thing. That's the point of all of this.
We
And
have a
it's not that we're dividing you, it's how you have to sit back and evaluate where, and it's not a bad thing, but it's how you have to evaluate who do you want to represent you is based on what are they doing. Are they out there testing your land? Are they out there getting you medical treatment? Are they creating studies with their experts to be able to go into court with you? Or are they preparing your case for a settlement? That's it.
Thank you. We have a question here, facilitating. Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
I have a question related to the question that you just asked.
Yeah.
About coordinating with other studies. Dr. Smith is going to be collecting dioxin data where
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
And the good doctor, if Mr. Smith
We're
finds,
gonna work with Mr. Dr.
you are, okay, because if Mr. Smith finds,
He's part of the
Number one, I'm not a doctor.
okay,
Just a crazy guy. No.
good, okay, so because I
He's the
know
guy
that,
lost in space, don't forget.
yeah.
I am working closely with this community, and I'm here to listen and do the testing. I'm not a doctor, I'm not qualified to do a health study, cause and effect. If my data can be used, you know.
He's gonna make it
right now,
available to
I'm
us.
here to do initial
Because-
testing for the community and help identify what you may have been exposed to.
The dioxins collect in fatty tissue. So how would you, good doctor, test for that if you find dioxin hotspots?
What you would do is a dioxin blood level, which costs, what, about $300 a sample, but it could be done. So we might do that. I mean, I don't know if that's part of the program that will be implemented, because
We have to
we
see
might
that.
have a random sample to look and see, because it's so expensive for each one, depending on how many plaintiffs we're looking at, and also, but that's the kind of thing we do. We do actual physical testing of people, not just a questionnaire.
And
That's
I
important.
can attest to that. I personally paid about $50 for 124 tests, so it's very expensive. And that was the least expensive test. That's what I paid for, so we have the data from our community, which hopefully will be useful to your research.
It'll be useful. I mean, that's gonna be.
All done through
I
us,
mean, I don't
through
think
our
there's any.
certified lab.
If the other attorneys do studies and they won't give us the results, that would be terrible, but we would like to have their results.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is, we will do, some of the other attorneys who paid for it, that's the way it goes. If we go to somebody and they have results, we will offer to pay whatever the cost of what they spent. If they tell us no, then we live with
Understood.
it. So
I do
it's
wanna make
like,
clear.
we're not asking people to do something for free. But when you have a retained expert, which Dr. Dahlgren is for us, because we come into every situation that we come into prepared. We are prepared. That is our point. We don't walk in here as a lawyer saying, we're going to help you. We walk in as lawyers saying, we have done our homework. We have contacted our experts. We have a plan when we come in. These are the things we are going to do. And we are going to continue to bring you information. We know where to start, and we know how to get to the finish line. That's all we're saying to you. Now, the fact that you want, all I can tell you is, all I'm here to say is this is our method of how we do it. Am I going to give it to your lawyer? No.
And yeah, I
I'm not.
appreciate that. I just want to make clear, never against position. Sharon over there is with one firm, Ed's with another firm.
I'm switching firms.
Okay, good. Tanya and I are with another firm. And all of us have asked those firms to share as much as possible. And so that's part of the motivation for our organization. That is not in any way a criticism of what I'm hearing here. I understand what you're saying. And I think that that is often, it's not always how it's done. But we have been asking as an organization for as much sharing as possible.
May I
You had
ask-
a-
I have a quick question.
You have a
I'm
quick
gonna go.
question, yeah.
How much lithium and other materials is estimated to have been incinerated? I saw an estimate of 12 million pounds. What's your
So our
estimate?
estimate from the beginning has been about 5,000 tons in terms of those 4 metals. That doesn't include the other materials that
So
came out of the
5,000
fire.
tons would be 10,000 pounds, so the 12,000 12,000
I've
not
heard
far
estimates
off.
as high as 20 million pounds.
20 million
which
pounds.
equates to 10,000 tons.
10, yeah, 10.
I've heard estimates as low as 600 tons. From the beginning, we had a big brain guy who said he thought it was about 5,000 tons based upon the numbers
Okay.
generated out of the volume of batteries that were consumed by the fire.
Thank you.
So that's where we've been resting, is at
Okay.
about 5,000 tons.
Okay.
Could be higher, could be lower, it's hard to determine exactly.
And Vistra's probably not been helpful in clarifying that.
Nothing from Vistra. Ms., did you have a question?
Yes, I'm wondering how the law firm determines who they will take as a client.
Anyone who's been affected, we take as a client, period. Anyone who's been affected, who feels they've been affected, would like our representation. I tell people all the time, we're here for you if you want us. If I show up and no one wants us, then no one wants us. That's okay too. But when I went to East Palestine and realized that we were too late for a lot of people, what I vowed is I would never be too late again. That's all. So that's my commitment, is to never walk into a room feeling as horrible as I felt for the people who opted into a class action who are now dying of cancer because they thought they had no other choices.
This woman here in red, and then Sharon.
I have a question for Dr. Dahlgren. Many of us in the community have been told at one time that it was too late to test for heavy metals in our blood. So I'm wondering, what would you be testing for, and how do you do those tests? Who does that?
Yeah, we can do heavy metals. Some of them have a long half-life. Lithium, for example, has a long half-life. We can measure that. Cobalt has got a shorter half-life. We probably won't measure that. So there are other things we can measure in the environment, which fluoride has a long half-life in the blood, so we can measure fluoride in the blood. We can measure dioxin. We can measure some of the other chemicals that we identified that are long-lived. Because it's only been, well, what, a year now? Not even that.
6 months.
January. 6 months. So a lot of these chemicals stay around for several years, so we can use those as index chemicals. We have to do a control at the same time, because normally people don't have lithium in their blood, but there may be some people who, for one reason or another, maybe have it. So we're going to try to see if there's an elevated amount, for example. That's how we would do it.
Sharon, you had a question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment. So I'm unhappy with the law firm that I signed up with. I'll name them, Singleton and Shriver. I've been asking them for months to put a health study out there, begging them, and they just keep delaying. I put them in contact with environmental toxicologists that are local that are willing to take on the study. They aren't moving forward. So I'm really grateful that you guys have somebody on board and you're actually going to move forward with a study, because like I said, I've been fighting my law firm to do a study.
Yeah, without that, you usually can't really convince a jury that people have been injured. That's the fact of the matter.
That's all.
Folks, other questions? Time check. We're about at the end of our scheduled time. Sir.
One last question for Mr. Smith. Will you be doing wellhead testing?
Yes, everything is on the table right now, and tomorrow morning, I'm going on the red eye back to the East Coast tomorrow night specifically because I'm meeting Brian and with everybody in charge of moss lasting, and we're to come up with a plan. I'm expecting preliminary results no sooner than 7 days, no later than probably 21 days from now.
On the dioxin testing that we did.
On dioxins, PFAS, and I also did the metals beyond the 4. I did the full spectrum of metals. These are full spectrum testing, so almost all the persistent chemicals that are going to be around, that could be around from the fire, are going to be there. But there may be some others, and I will get input from Dr. Dahlgren and once I get the results.
I also real quick want to call on Becky there in the back. Becky, by the way, what's the name of your podcast, Becky?
Community Matters.
Yes, and what channel is it? I mean, it's on the internet. Becky's been wonderful in Santa Cruz. She has been following the story. She's been interviewing a lot of us over and over again to keep this story going. Becky, you had a question.
I have a question about, is there a possibility to have combination with animal studies? My veterinarian said he saw unusually high number of ruminant animals aborting their young right after the fire. He said there may be a study with UC Davis, but...
Becky, I'm the one working on that.
Excellent.
So there are 2 professors at UC Davis I've been speaking to. They're putting together a proposal. I've asked them to get me the information so I can see if there's a way for me to pay for it. The goal would be to be able to take blood samples using local volunteer vets, to then take those samples, get them analyzed. They can extrapolate from that, according to what they're telling me, the potential for future increases in cancer levels. So I'm trying to get them as soon as possible, but they're professors, they got to go through, they're used to grants, and I'm like, if we can get to a number, maybe we can find folks to stroke a check and get this done sooner. So that's what's happening with UC Davis.
Yeah, the other thing that we're doing is we're bringing on a lot of the grant money that was going to a lot of these research scientists has now been pulled. So at the Keenan Law Firm, we've been reaching out in San Francisco. We have a researcher in reproductive health, for example, and all of her research grants on dioxins and reproductive health has been yanked. So she's agreed to come on, and she is one of our experts now. And so we have found, with all the pulling of the grants, that there are people who in the past have not worked as experts that have now, we have reached out at the Keenan Law Firm and have now been able to bring them with us. The other thing that we are doing is we're looking similarly at a veterinarian toxicologist, because both in East Palestine and in Conyers, we find that the animals have been horribly affected. And so we're bringing on someone who can really take that area independently, and we're looking at, again, at the universities where the grant money has dried up, and trying to find the best, based on published data, that we can bring in who can address that. And the good part is, because we represent East Palestine, because we represent Conyers, because we have another battery fire case in Ohio, we have the ability to take these experts who will then have data from all of these areas with the client, and we get, all of our clients get medically worked up. All of our clients, we get all of this medical data on, which then, because if you're gonna fight all of this across the country, it certainly benefits to have all of the medical data, not just here, but in similar situations across the United States, so that people understand it's not just here we're talking about. It's Ohio, it's East Palestine, it's everywhere. Because if people think it's just here, I hate to tell you, they won't care. And so that's part of what at the Keenan Law Firm that we're doing, is making sure that what we do allows us to build the kind of information we need to build, so that when we come here with databases of information.
Folks, I want to wrap it up here, if I may, out of respect for your time. I want to thank Keenan, I want to thank Mimi and her team, the good doctor, for coming out. I want to thank Jami for being instrumental, Scott for doing the work he's doing for our community. I also would like to ask you all, if you'd be kind enough, take a look at these amazing photographs that have been done by Matt McFall. Matt has been in the slough every day almost since the fire. Before then, extraordinary wildlife photographs. He's allowed us to use them at no charge at the website when we've needed them for imagery. Please check it out. He's here. He's a great guy. Talk to him. Feel free to stick around and talk to each other for a bit if you'd like. Talk to us. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.